Welcome to the final episode of Alpha Whisperers Genesis, where we explore the hidden world of the quiet power behind the power, the unseen dynamics shaping leadership and decision-making at the highest levels of business, government, and beyond. I'm Dr. Laura Sicola.
And I'm Janet C. Salazar, creator of the Alpha Whisperers brand. Today, we close out this series by looking forward. The world is at a crossroads. Broadly speaking, we're grappling with a leadership vacuum on major global challenges ranging from climate change and geopolitical instability to the ever-accelerating influence of AI. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Given how fast things are changing, I can't emphasize enough how urgent it is that we take action now.
Janet, it sounds like the role of the Alpha Whisperers has never been more critical. And it really reinforced what we've been highlighting throughout this entire series, that the Alpha Whisperers of tomorrow have to live up to a new and higher standard than Alpha Whisperers of yesterday, but they have to do it today.
Exactly, Laura. And one thing is clear. The need for change is undeniable, and the fact is that the whisperers who counsel our leaders hold the keys to shaping the future of our civilization.
Wow.
So that's why today we're talking about the new breed, the need for a new generation of alpha whisperers that's internally driven by integrity, accountability, and a commitment never to serve their own interests at the expense of the greater good. And let's face it, this new breed isn't going to emerge by chance, Laura. It has to be intentionally cultivated because they ultimately have to be prepared to meet the demands of a world that's getting more complex and interconnected by the minute.
No pressure. Okay, so with all of that, today we're going to deep dive into what defines this new breed, why it's urgent, and how we all, including you out there listening, can take action. Ready, Janet?
Yes, Laura, let's get going.
Okay, so for starters, let's clarify. What sets the new breed apart from the whisperers of the past?
Well, first, they are not your yes men or yes women. Their loyalty is not blind or completely unconditional. It's built on shared values and the courage to challenge their alphas when necessary, even when it's unpopular or uncomfortable or maybe a lot of times even risky.
So in leadership training and coaching, when we're working on developing executive presence, what you're describing is what we refer to as speaking truth to power. And it's an utterly non-negotiable skill or even a trait for some people, that ability. So at some point, you have to be able to tell someone something that they're not going to like. Maybe it's that results are not what you had hoped they were going to be, or that the person is wrong about something. So whether it's your boss or the board of directors or a major client, investors, whoever, it's never easy and it's certainly never fun, but you got to do it. You can't just avoid conversations that are going to be potentially unpleasant under some excuse like, well, I'm kind of conflict averse. I've always been conflict averse. You got to be able to put on your big girl or big boy shoes and have the conversation.
Exactly, Laura. And that's because one of the most important things to consider for alpha whisperers is ethics. They have to prioritize the greater good over personal gain. And I cannot repeat that enough. And that's non-negotiable.
Sure.
And that includes the fact that they cannot just avoid conflict. They have to be willing to engage in hard conversations. But just to be clear, Laura, this does not mean that they're reckless either. What sets the new breed apart is their ability to balance boldness on the one hand and diplomacy on the other hand.
I am so glad that you pointed that out, because so many people who could be really great alpha whisperers end up sabotaging themselves because they want to be themselves. They want to be authentic. That's everybody's favorite word nowadays. But they make a massive mistake by thinking that being authentic means being unfiltered. And that is not the same thing. They're missing an absolutely core ingredient, which is diplomacy. It's like trying to bake a cake without sugar. It's not going to work. And at the very least, it's not going to taste good. It's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth. And let's be clear. Of course, by diplomacy, we also don't mean just being quote unquote politically correct in that cliche sense.
Exactly. That's correct, Laura. And I definitely don't want to eat a cake that's going to leave a bad taste in my mouth.
Defeats the purpose of eating cake.
Exactly. So we're talking about the ability to time their counsel perfectly. It's about knowing when to whisper, when to pull punches, and even when to shout if the moment demands it.
Yeah, the timing issue is almost an intuition that you have to be able to read. I think that's a lot of the emotional intelligence that we discussed. When we talk about diplomacy and about tact, there are some really great definitions that I refer to a lot in trainings that I do and things, which is, for example, Howard Newton, like 100 years ago, it said so perfectly that tact is the ability to make a point without making an enemy. That's what it boils down to.
I like that.
It's not nicey-nicey. It's not hiding or
Right.
eggshells. Make a point
Yeah.
without making an enemy. It's just threading that needle. Someone else, Danielle Varay, said in a kind of a tongue-in-cheek way that tact is the ability to let someone else have your way. It's a fun little way to think about it. But I think my
Yeah.
favorite is that Winston Churchill purportedly said that tact is the ability to tell someone to go to hell in such a way that it makes them look forward to the trip. So
I love it. Yeah. And who doesn't love Winston Churchill saying
he
that?
definitely had a way with words.
I know. Tell me about it. I love it. And what I love most also is that those quotes focus on understanding what's required to be effective.
Yes,
It has nothing to do with being inauthentic.
right.
The new breed's success will depend significantly on mastering that skill.
100%. It also brings to mind that something you've said is that another defining characteristic of the new breed is their ability to navigate the transformative role of technology, especially AI. So we're shifting gears here a little bit. Why is that so critical? The ability to navigate technology, specifically AI.
Well, Laura, as you very well know, AI is reshaping every facet of decision making from business to government and beyond. And Alpha Whispers need to understand not just how to use AI, but how to guide ethical, trustworthy decisions around it. Because AI can amplify and elevate great leadership, but it can also amplify the effects of disastrous choices.
We get that sense of the amplification, and the ripple effect just goes further and further.
Exactly. And it goes both ways if not
Yes.
managed properly. So that's why whispers of the future have to ensure that their alphas wield the power of AI responsibly. Because those decisions are going to shape outcomes in business, politics, and diplomacy.
Yeah, I mean, realizing the current and exponentially greater, not so distant future power of AI, the fact is that the stakes really couldn't be higher at this point in history.
Exactly. And the goal is that if Alpha Whispers can leverage technology while staying grounded in human values, then they can craft a new standard for influence. A standard that prioritizes ethics, inclusivity, and transformative impact.
That's a big goal.
Is there any other kind worth making?
Fair point.
So the new breed of Alpha Whispers needs to have that unmatched ability to balance hard data with intuition and analytical rigor with emotional intelligence. Again, I want to repeat that, Laura. The new breed of Alpha Whisperers needs to have the unmatched ability to balance hard data with intuition and analytical rigor with emotional intelligence. They operate in a space where influence matters as much as information. So they understand all these things.
So it sounds like both the right brain and the left brain components, the hard data, the numbers, the analytical rigor on the one hand, and those quote unquote softer skills, which are, I think, foolishly named because the fact is they're hard, but the intuition, the emotional intelligence, the people skills, the influence skills, all of those need to work together. You can't just be dominant in one. All right. With that, Janet, what can today's listeners, whether they're current whisperers, aspiring ones, or leaders, or just independently moving forward people, what can our listeners take away from this?
Well, first, Laura, even though our examples in this series have been focused on heads of government and corporations, it's important to understand that the principles of alpha whispering are not limited to CEOs or presidents. At its core, this is about influence, diplomacy, and service. And these skills are relevant for everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you're advising global leaders or leading a local organization or simply guiding your family, your wife, your husband, your children, or your parents,
Yeah.
even.
That's managing up on a whole different level. I think that might be beyond my pay grade, Janet. Trying to manage parents is a whole different animal from that. But I suppose these skills are relevant there too, for sure. So, what I'm hearing, I guess, is that for individuals, it's about preparing yourself, on the one hand, to act with courage, to act with integrity, and also to work on developing the skills in diplomacy, in influence. And that for organizations, it means embedding these values into your culture. It means training your people in the skills of the new breed and consciously prioritizing those skills in the recruiting and promoting decisions. Does that sound about right?
Yes, this is about creating systemic change, both within ourselves and within our institutions.
That's a really big concept. We're not just making changes, systemic change. That's really huge. So we really do need everyone working together on this. And of course, all massive change starts from the top. And speaking of systemic change, Janet, you're not just talking. You're putting your money where your mouth is, so to speak. And you have created, or you're creating, a groundbreaking program to train top tier new breed alpha whisperers.
Yes, the New Breed Masterclass. I'm so excited about this, Laura. The Masterclass is the ultimate incubator for the next generation of Alpha Whisperers, and it's the first of its kind.
And I have to say, I am equally excited to be working with you on that masterclass, developing the program, along with some of the most influential alpha whisperers of our time. People out there listening, if you're curious, you can find out more on the website at alphawhisperer.com. Okay, so Janet, this may be the tail end of the Genesis series, but it's just the beginning of our Alpha Whisperers journey. So what's coming up next?
So a lot of things coming up, Laura, and it's
Yes.
also exciting. There are more upcoming special miniseries like what we're doing that are going to look at different facets of the world of Alpha Whisperers. For example, we'll have Alpha Whisperers ambassadors, where
Ooh.
we're going to talk about whisperers in the United Nations and on the global stage to talk about international relations, geopolitical situations in the global space, and all that.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah, that's quite exciting because, as you know, when we do these conversations around Alpha Whisperers, we start peeling off the layers or peeking into the curtain behind. So the world of ambassadors and diplomats are not normally out there, right? That's why this is a fertile ground for Alpha Whisperers. So what we're going to be doing during our series when we do our Alpha Whispers Ambassador series is exactly this. We're going to share with our audience what it is behind the curtains for this diplomats and ambassadors. So it's quite exciting.
So exciting.
Really exciting. And the second one that we're looking at is Alpha Whispers White House.
Wow.
Because as you know, when the United States coughs, the whole world gets a cold.
That's the expression.
And in this series, we're going to be looking at historical lessons from government leadership here in the United States. So that's going to be exciting.
It is. It is. And let's just put a caveat on that for everybody out there listening. We are not picking sides. We are not talking about the election or any election. That's not what this is about. We are looking at things that happen in the White House, but we just don't get your hackles up about worrying about this becoming a political conversation in the traditional partisan, ugly sense that the rest of the media seems to have taken it. This is just going to be an exciting look, just like we did a couple of episodes ago. So buckle up and come join us for that conversation as well.
Exactly. Thank you for making that clarification, Laura. Yeah. Again, with all these conversations around the Alpha Whisperers, really the focus is on leadership. That's the most important thing. So we take a look at all kinds of leadership and alpha whispering that happens behind the scene. The next one, which is very timely, of course, is Alpha Whisperers AI. which will focus on the evolving role of technology and influence, like we talked about before. So, also this year is going to be the International Year of Quantum Innovation declared by the United Nations. So, there's a lot to unpack because now the talk is all about that convergence of AI and quantum innovation. That's the whole new level of how these things influence decision making at the top level. Very exciting.
Well, I certainly know that I'm going to have a lot to learn in that series as well. So wait to hear about that one. What's another mini series that's on the horizon?
This one is close to my heart and takes a big chunk of conversations when we talk about Alpha Whisperers. And this is called Alpha Whisperers Athena. Laura, can you explain to our audience who is Athena?
Sure. Athena was the Greek goddess, I believe, of wisdom, of commerce, and of warfare, which is an interesting conversation. So I'm guessing Alpha Whispers Athena, we're going to be focusing on women.
Exactly, Laura. Aptly titled Athena. And we are going to explore the role of women in alpha whispering. More and more women assume more roles of influence in business, politics, and global institutions, right?
Yep.
So female alpha whisperers have the ability to shift the focus from power as dominance to power as service, from leadership as control to leadership as collaboration.
And one more caveat on that point, Janet, is we want everybody else out there to understand that we are not drawing any sort of gender lines saying, well, the men have screwed it up and women are going to come in and fix everything. Like that's not going to happen. We understand there are great whisperers, great alphas in both camps, and there are people who are not so wonderful in both camps. We're just excited to focus on one of the groups that has been less attention has been paid, less notice to the great works that they have done. So we're going to focus one series on the role of women who have been in the whisperer role. Fair enough, Janet?
Absolutely, Laura.
And of course, all of these items that we've just listed, from the ambassadors, White House, AI, Athena's, this is just scratching the surface. There's really so much more that we would love to explore, and we will.
And that's why this series, Genesis, has been a call to action, not just for better advice, but for a total reimagining of leadership itself. We have to fundamentally reshape the systems and structures that have brought us to where we are today, for better and, in many ways, unfortunately, for worse. This is the urgency for change. The new breed of alpha whisperers represents a pathway to a more ethical, inclusive, and sustainable future. To me, it's the only way to democratize and humanize decision-making at the highest levels through proactive training and greater accountability. The world can be better. We can be better if we can make these changes happen.
And that is our motivation for doing all of this. And I'm so excited to do this work with you. It sounds like the new breed of alpha whisperers is going to need to be more than just advisors. They're going to play a role in shaping public discourse, in driving new narratives, and even in building movements, because that's what's needed nowadays. And if that's the case, they're going to have the skill, the will, and the stomach, or at least the backbone, to be activists, strategists, and thought leaders in their own right.
Exactly, Laura. I love the part where you said to have that stomach, or at least the backbone. That's very important.
And it's not easy when you're working with at that kind of level, when you're talking about global or massive corporate leaderships, and in whatever our own space is, it feels huge. Whatever we're dealing with. Backbone and stomach, two really important anatomical parts of an alpha whisperer, or an alpha for that matter.
Exactly.
And we're just getting started, like I said. So to all of you out there, thank you for joining us on this journey into the quiet power behind the power. I'm Dr. Laura Sicola.
And I'm Janet C. Salazar.
And you're listening to Alpha Whisperers Genesis.